Okay. Now. Oops. I think we're ready for our speaker. Dan Schwartz has been the Nevada State Treasurer since January 2015. He has revamped the state's investment program, tripling returns. He has backed ESAs and launched a college savings program. Received degrees from Princeton, Boston University, and Columbia University, and a lot more, but I'm going to ask Dan to come on up, Dan.
No.
You don't, so no. You won't need this?
No.
Oh, okay.
But let me get my...
okay.
Who's the sound expert here?
Oh, David.
David, okay, good.
Button on the bottom.
Okay, button on the bottom. Bottom, I got it.
You have any light?
No.
Okay, and Dan,
And you can put
Don wanted to get a picture of us together.
Oh, okay, sure.
Okay.
Good.
All right. Better take another one in case I have my eyes closed. Okay, thanks. I always close my eyes when I get a picture taken.
Can you hear me? Or how does this sound? Does this sound perfect too? No. Okay, now let's see. Okay, how does this? All right. Okay, good. Thank you, Joy, and thank you, Finance Club. I was interested to hear Joy's remarks that absolutely no recommendations from any of the speakers should be taken seriously. And then I looked over here and I saw this raging bull on fire. So I think you've all declared your allegiances. As Joy said, my name is Dan Schwartz. I'm the state treasurer. Let me just tell you a little bit about myself, and then I'll tell you a little bit what I'm going to talk about. Joy, I'd talk for about 15 minutes and then take questions.
However you want to do it, Dan.
Okay.
Yeah,
thanks.
I know people will have a lot of questions, so that's great.
Okay, good. The Shell answer man, for those of you who remember, is in. I grew up in Chicago, as the slide suggested. I did my undergraduate at Princeton. I'm actually an Army veteran. I was one of the last of the draftees, although I enlisted. I have a law degree from Boston University and an MBA from Columbia. I worked on Wall Street for probably about 10 years and then started my own firm. But at the same time, for those of you who've been in financial services, there's the other side of the coin, which is sort of the entrepreneurial coin. So I was always interested in writing. So we started some newsletters, and then I had a chance to buy a financial journal in Hong Kong called the Asian Venture Capital Journal, which I did. And not only was I able to turn around a business that was headed for 7 nonstop through 11. And those of you who are familiar with the bankruptcy laws will know that 11 is debtor in possession and 7 is unfortunately involuntary liquidation. And we were on the cusp of that, but we came in, we put out the fires, surveyed the charred ruins, and began rebuilding. And we happened to have been in Asia at a very fortuitous time. China was still unknown, India was unknown, Japan was investing in postal savings. But over the course of my stay there, the world changed. And we had a front porch seat to see that happened. If you're really interested, I wrote a book on it called The Future of Finance, How Private Equity and Venture Capital Will Shape the Global Economy. It's written by an author in whom I have the utmost confidence, and it's I think, an interesting look at finance in the Asian markets at what was really a historic turning point. I then, during the course of that, I started another business, which was a digital magazine delivery platform. We didn't write digital magazines, but we distributed print publications for by other publishers. And my mother always used to say that Steve Jobs stole my idea. And I said, Mom, he may have, but he had some other better ideas. And that was called Kiosk. That business is still extant. We're in the process of pivoting, as they say in the venture world. But through that, I came to Nevada in 2000, 2001. And then with 9/11, I moved back to New York and Hong Kong. And then eventually when we were bought out from ABCJ, I came back to Nevada. For those of you with a long memory, I ran for Congress in 2012, lost in the primary, was state finance chairman for a year, 2 years for GOP, ran for treasurer and won, and then must be a hot investment tip there, markets. And then ran for treasurer in 14, won, and for those of you who've gotten the card, I'm now running for governor in the Republican primary and then hopefully in the general election next year. So that's briefly about my background. It's in finance, it's in business. I've signed the front of the check, not just the back of the check, and can sympathize with all of you who've run your own businesses, and hopefully with an equal number of you who not only run your own businesses but gotten paid for it, which is not an always thing. What I want to talk about tonight is a couple of things. Number one is just what we've done at the Treasurer's office, and I won't bore you with the details, but we've had a good record there. I want to talk to you and then maybe go into detail, because this is the Finance Club. How have we done it? And that's with certain statutory limitations. Talk to you a little bit about my worldview of the economy, if you're interested. I was talking to a couple of people. If you're not, just go like that. Fast forward to the Q&A. And then if you want to talk politics, we're getting ready. We're in the throes of the campaign. I'm waiting for an opponent who seems a little shy about announcing, but I'm sure he will, and we'll be off to the races. But first, the State Treasurer's Office. We have 4 major responsibilities. Everyone, when I'm introduced, they say, oh, Dan Schwartz, he takes care of our money. Well, I do, but I also do several other things. And I think one of the questions I always used to get was, Dan, are you an accountant? And I said, no, why should I be? And I think there's a very bright red line between counting the money, and this is not to disparage accountants at all. I mean, we all have accountants, and investing the money. And I think I probably have been one of the few, maybe the only person who's been in the office who's actually had experience investing money, in structuring deals, and has some understanding of what it is not to just keep the money, but to grow it. And as Joyce said, we have actually tripled returns on the state's money. We manage about $3 billion. And of that, we have what's known as the general fund. And of that, we have, when I came in, I was in the office, and there was this very nice person who was parked in front of a Bloomberg machine, who was effectively investing our $3 billion. And she fortunately retired about 6 months later, and then we decided that wasn't going to really work for us. So we hired a couple of outside managers whom we vetted, and then we took the short end of our portfolio. And again, the state, we are prescribed by statute. We can only invest in bonds, AAA, AA bonds. We're limited in our maturities. So it's a real effort to grow that. And while we've had some help from Janet Yellen, I think the rest of that has really been our own understanding and our own worldview of the markets, and effectively understanding where we should put the money. But let me just briefly touch on what else we do. We do unclaimed property. And I'm sure all of you have probably seen these 10-page listings in the paper in type, about 3-point type, listing all the people in the state who we owe things to. If you have your reading glasses, do take a look, because it's found money. And when I came in, the processing period was 120 days. We've now got it down to 20. So, and we actually have it down to 1, but it's bounced back, and we'll get it back there. But if you do, and you can go to the treasurer's website and just put your name in, and if you have the money, come and claim it. You've got to have certain proof. We've had some fraudulent claims, but it's real and it's there, and we get it to you quickly. We also issue the state's debt, and over the course of the last 2.5 years, through bond refundings, in other words, we've taken bonds issued at a higher interest rate and we've reissued them at a lower interest rate, we've saved taxpayers $80 million, which is good, but it's not the best thing I've done. The best thing I've done was a company called Faraday Future. Have any of you read about that? Good, yeah. This was, and since I'm not running against him, and since he's term limited, I've said I'm not going to diss the departed, but a senior government official in Nevada basically thought this was the answer to his prayers. Here's this car company that's going to come in and build a manufacturing plant in the wastelands of North Las Vegas. Just give me 1 second. I'll let you ponder that, but for those of you who've been up there, we all have vivid imaginations, but this one really requires a Walt Disney style inventive streak. Anyway, long and short of it, the guy who was going to finance it didn't have the money. This went on for 1.5 years, and they finally pulled out. And we were asked to issue $175 million in bonds. As time went on, I became increasingly intransigent that this was not going to happen. And had we done that, they would have defaulted. This senior, I would have been blamed because I issued the money, and the guys whose fault it was would still be governor. Sorry if I mentioned who he was. But so that's another thing. And so investments, bonds, and then college savings and college kickstart. To me, which is the most important part of my job, which is getting the people of Nevada to save for their kids or their grandkids to go to college. And I think one of the greatest dangers of college education is not only that your kid will be smarter than you, but that you will be paying for his education from now until kingdom come. And it's a real serious problem. So I think with this crowd, probably for your grandchildren, if you can, we have what's known as 529 programs. I would really encourage you to look at those as gifts for your grandkids and start saving. And what they do is that over the years, the average returns, I don't know where interest rates are going to go, I don't know where equity prices are going to go, but over time, equity prices have, on average, increased 9% a year. This is a historical fact. Sometimes it's more. I mean, I think in the past 10 years, one year we were down 30%, another year we were up 30%, but over time about 9%. Any of you on PERS here, which is the Public Employees Retirement System? Yeah, they've had a reasonably good, I just met with their, Stu Edmondson, I think, was written up in the Wall Street Journal. And the theme of the article is what does the Nevada Chief Investment Officer do? The answer was nothing. And he uses passive income strategies to invest, but he I think last year had an 11% return. There's now roughly $40 billion under management. His private equity portfolio has generated about 19%. And that's another story, but he's a reasonably smart guy. And the implication for you as investors in your own right, and I'll talk about my strategy, which again I don't recommend or not recommend, but there's multiple types of investment strategies. Is to do something that you're comfortable with that has the prospect of good returns. So there's two parts to that. So that's what we do as a state treasurer. We invest your money. We just don't hold it. We invest it. We've done bond refundings, which is taking higher interest rate bonds and swapping them for lower interest rate bonds and effectively recognizing the difference as gains. And we gained about 80 million on that. We do college, kickstart college education, college savings, and then we do unclaimed property. So that's the office. Let me tell you a little bit about our investment strategies. We've got a great team. When I came in, as I said, we had about $3 billion total. One of those was actually the permanent school fund, which is, we have 5 funds, but this was one of them. And we, up to date, my predecessor had not invested in any equity. And that's about a $300 million fund. I said, let's invest in equity. We started with 10 million, now we have a regular program. I think she's generated close to $3 to $4 million on that, and that's just because of when we started investing. And what we did is we bought Vanguard, which is one of the, it's actually a 529. It's in the 529 program, but it's a very good mutual fund. I'm not recommending it. I'm just telling you what we've done. What we realized was we took a worldview on interest rates, and this is in January of 2015. And we said interest rates are low, okay? Truthfully, you didn't have to be a genius to know that, and especially you didn't. But again, life is not only having a good idea, but executing it. And we executed. We took some capital gains on our bonds. The 2-year bond, when I came in, was trading at about 49 or 50 basis points, and today it's about 150. So, and as everyone here knows, as interest rates go up, bond prices go down. So the fact that we were able to sell then gave us some good capital gains. What we've done since then, we've said, is we believe that interest rates, again, this is not anything that was hidden from you, are going to increase over time. The chairman of the Fed told us that, and we believed him. So what we did is we took the 2 long-term, we took $600 million, we gave 2 managers each $300 million, but we gave them very tight parameters in terms of the maturities of those funds. So they couldn't go out 10 years. They really had to keep it fairly short. And again, for those of you who do bond, anyone do bond investing here? Yeah, good. I'm not a big bond investor, but the short end has done very well. I mean, we have what's now known as a flat yield curve, and that means that there's very little difference between the 30-year and the 2-year. I mean, you can do 30 days if you want, but effectively we do 2 years on the short end, and maybe we go out to 4 or 5 years on the long end, and those have done very well. And I saw today. I get up in the morning so I can catch the market open. They were talking about an inverted yield curve. Anyone know what an inverted yield curve is? Yeah. I don't see it, but that's a risk. In other words, where your short end gets on top of your long end. I think we have a ways to go on that, but that's a possibility. The other thing we did, so we took a worldview. The worldview, turned out to be reasonably correct. We executed on it. What we also did is, this being Nevada, no one was tracking the actual cash that was spent and generated. And you're saying to yourself, how can that be? This is the great state of Nevada. We have all of this financial firepower in the legislature and other offices in the state. Well, in fact, we didn't. And what we did is we started to track the amount of cash that was coming in versus the amount that's going out. We have to pay all state salaries, we pay for new buses and vehicles and whatnot. And what we found out was that we were holding a lot more cash than we needed to hold. So we by going back over the past few years, we calculated, just some rough parameters in that, and we began investing that. And that has also added to the returns that we've generated. So again, understanding financial markets, putting some money into equity, not much, but really understanding the fixed income markets to say, we believe the chairman of the Fed who says that interest rates are going to go up, and because they were so low, that seemed like a pretty good bet. And at the same time, also understanding the cash flow that we have. So that really, and just in terms of what we've done, my predecessor returned $6 million to state agencies. Last year we returned, I want to say it was 14, so from 6 to 14. This year, in the first 6 months, we've already returned 11. So we think we doubled last year, we think we will again double this year. And as I say, Janet Yellen is probably responsible for some of that, but I think, again, understanding the markets, taking a world view, and acting on that has been the reason we've done so well. And again, these are not investment recommendations. They're just what we've done. And again, none of this has been rocket science. Let me just say one other thing in terms of sort of the world view. And again, this is just my opinion, which is fortunately shared by some well-known economists, or maybe I've taken theirs and I'm sharing theirs. But I think this is going to continue. And I was around in 2008, 2009 when the market crashed. I was probably off 30%. But what's happened since then has almost been a Goldilocks economy. Everyone was waiting for the economy to go, rocket up, but it hasn't done that. It's just been a very consistent 1%, 2% a year, but it's been consistently up. And I think you're continuing to see that right now. Interest rates they're up considerably from where I started, but again, this is, but they're not up to 4 or 5%. I mean, the 30-year is still under 3 points. The 2-year which is about 1.5, and I think the 10-year is about
2.34. 2.34.
2.34. Yeah. Okay. So it's a very nice economy. Corporate earnings, we're going to find out because this is corporate earnings season. But I think you're going to see that corporate earnings are going to continue to grow nicely. And, pick good stocks, good companies. Sometimes you get winners, sometimes you get losers, and sometimes you get great surprises. So if the surprises are on the upside, you're in good shape. But as I say, that's my worldview, is that, and I don't know where the president got his ideas on the economy is going to crash or it's going to be a recession. I see, and again, this is strictly my view, I see little, if any, chance of a recession. I don't see any great boom happening. There's a big difference in our economy today in 2017 and what it was, say, 20 years ago. For starters, China and India have come into a world economy, and what does that mean? It means that they're low-cost producers. So all the stuff that you buy at Kmart and probably some other Bloomingdale's, for all I know, they're all made overseas, and they're all made at lower prices. Technology has done a tremendous job in increasing productivity. There's been a movement out of manufacturing into the service industries. Again, this all impacts the cost of living. Oil prices way down. I mean, they bumped up with the hurricane. So again, without boring you or going into detail, I think that this economy is going to continue, and I just don't see any signs of that changing. you may, in the Q&A, you may have a radically different opinion, and feel free to disclose that, but that's kind of what I see. That's strictly the financial. I can talk about politics, but I'll only do that on Q&A. As I mentioned, I'm running for governor. It's going to be a great race. If my opponent ever declares, there'll be two of us on the Republican side, two on the Democratic side. And I think, too, to me, having watched the legislature at close hand, we have a real problem in this state. And that this legislature is effectively controlled by lobbyists. And is there anything wrong with that? Not necessarily. I mean, lobbyists are those who argue for a certain point of view, and then they contribute to candidates' campaign coffers. And it only becomes a problem, which it becomes all too frequently, when good bills die because of what lobbyists contribute. And we had a payday loan bill. We didn't get it done through a Republican legislature. We had a very mild bill. The guys in the industry bought off the top Democrats. It's clear as day. We had the ESAs. Again, these are the education savings accounts. Let me just ask you a question. This is for how many of you really know what an ESA is? Good. No, I appreciate you saying that.
Educational savings account.
You know.
No,
Everyone here, what are they? Right. I know. That's what I'm saying. And this to me is very interesting because it's parental choice. It's the bill that was passed enabled the state to give, depending on your income level, $5,200, or if you're over 185% of the poverty level, $5,700 to parents who wanted their kids to go to private schools. Okay, so it was parental choice, and there are some great schools in the state. I went to a public school. I went to public school in suburban Chicago. It was wonderful.
Which suburb?
Oak Park River Forest High School, the hustling Huskies. But it was a great school. But the problem is today in Nevada we don't have those great schools, or we have them and they are far and few in between. And we, the Treasurer's Office, was asked to develop the regulations. We did. We had 3 separate hearings. In those 3 separate hearings, I saw one legislator, Don Gustafson from the North, who's no longer running, attend. No one else was there. No D's, no R's, no, there were maybe a couple of journalists. And what this bill really helps is our couples where both the mom and dad are working, single moms, veterans, military families that move around, and these parents want their kids to get an education, and they are not getting it in Nevada schools today. So I'm a big proponent of that. In fact, what I've said in my campaigns, I will sign no bill until I have an ESA bill on my desk. And I know you're saying, Dan, come off it. Get real. This is Nevada 2017. Well, you haven't met my Italian friend, Vito. You will if I get elected. And it's a tremendously powerful tool that the governor has at his disposal. And I will use it. I will use it unsparingly. I will use it to get ESAs done. I will use it to get education. Again, the current governor, I know if you remember the $1.5 billion tax hike. Right, it's hard to forget. And what was it, 2 or 3 months ago, all of a sudden, the Clark County schools are short $60 to $80 million. And how did that happen? I don't know. Governor didn't know. But this is the system that we have today. And it's as much, you can blame the governor, but it's the legislature and it's the people who fund them. And as I said, I've seen it from very close quarters. Beyond that, there's industries in the state that we can grow. Unmanned aerial vehicles, which are the drones, autonomous vehicles, water tech. That's a little more, I've done some investigating, and that's a little more specious than just getting this technology, whatever that is. Alternative energy. there's a lot of things that the state can do instead of just giving out tax abatements. And we were talking about that earlier. I was very much, I was in favor of Tesla, but Tesla doesn't even use their tax abatements. The tax abatements are where the state doesn't give tax money or allows companies not to pay their taxes. And the reason the governor has to keep raising taxes is because we've given it all away. And I was just at a ribbon cutting ceremony this afternoon where it was a trucking company that does last mile delivery. And he said, Haley, who's my campaign coordinator here, is checking on to make sure I got here on time today. Listen to what he said. He said, this is the greatest state to do business in. You have no corporate income tax. You have no personal income tax. We can buy a house here for the cost of a garage in California. And, yeah, and probably a lot of former Californians here. The cost of living, is low, and the county permitting agencies give you your permits the next day. I'm exaggerating, but it's a very business-friendly climate. And there's no reason why we, as a state, have to continue to give away tax abatements to industries which, at the end of the day, may or may not need or deserve it. So, that's, I'm not going to talk about the pay to play, I'm not going to talk about other things, but that's just kind of a political overview of the landscape here. I think I've talked far more than I probably said I would. My political promises are much more certain, but if you have any questions, please feel free.
Dan?
Yes?
I have a question about the unclaimed property.
Sure.
Now, are you required, excuse me, are you required, the Treasurer's Office, to publish everything in the RJ and probably up in the Reno Gazette? Why can't they just do it online? It must cost a fortune to publish all that stuff in the newspaper.
Well, in fact, Joy, you are spot on. The one bill that we did get passed actually put an end to publishing $100,000 worth of ads in the RJ, and what we're doing now is doing it regularly, periodically, encouraging people to go to the Treasurer's website, www.nevadatreasurer.gov, and go to unclaimed property and look to see if your name is there. So
Yeah,
you're
because
right.
I know a lot of people aren't even getting the RJ anymore. So.
Yeah, go on. You're absolutely right. This is a recent.
And Reno Gazette or whatever.
Reno Gazette Journal.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Yeah.
If you have a question, wait
Yeah, I'm
for
gonna
the
let you.
microphone.
Dan, I just looked up here. That's something something dear to me, and I just noticed here that Nevada in 2015, it says here we were the 44th best state from a debt standpoint and 48th per capita. My question is, and I know the debt hasn't really changed a lot since you've taken it over in 2015, but do you foresee Nevada taking on any new debt in the future?
I don't know what you're looking at, but we have maintained our debt ratings. So that may be the 44th in terms of the amount of debt, which means, which is pretty good. I mean, that's one table that we're finally where we should be. But we've maintained the AA plus, AA2 rating, and I don't see that changing. The reason is I'm here, but also we're bound by statutory limitations, whereby the governor we must have a balanced budget, unlike the guys in Washington who just have a credit card that has no limit on it. So the answer is I don't see that changing. I think we will continue to be financially sound.
What was your first red flag on Faraday Future?
Sure. Okay. The first red flag was they asked us to issue the bond, and I'd never heard of them. and I hadn't heard of Jia Yutang. But I went to Google and I said, who is this guy? It turns out he has a public company called Lush. And they called to treat. And this was literally one day after, may have even been while the legislature was passing this enabling legislation. So I know here in the States, when you stop trading, that's a bad sign. So I said,
Not always.
right, it's a bad sign. So I said, maybe I'd look at the guy's financials. And actually, if you dig not all that deep, Bloomberg and MarketWatch all publish these listed companies' financials. And what was clear was that they had a lot of revenues, $6 billion, but they had very small margins. I call them grocery store margins. They're like 1%, 2%. And even probably Amazon now is getting Whole Foods to get those. So I'm saying, wait a minute, this guy has promised $1 billion factory and he's only generating $30 to $40 million from his public company. And then probably the third time I really started getting concerned was my wife is Chinese and she goes home for Chinese New Year. So we go back and visit the old folks back in Shanghai. And I said, well, I'm going to China. Maybe I'll stop and talk to some people. So I did. And what they said confirmed what I had read in the financials. The guy was a dreamer. His companies didn't really generate the income that you would think to support $1 billion factory, not to mention his own business, not to mention the slew of companies that he announced that he was going to start about 3 or 4 months later. So it quickly became clear to me that we have a problem. And as time went on, we met with, and probably the fourth reason was, you would think that someone who was going to build $1 billion factory would send some of their top executives to visit the state treasurer who was going to issue these bonds. Well, the first guy who bounces into our office is a lobbyist from one of the, I won't mention them, but from probably one of the better known lobbyist groups in the States, who said, I can see him sitting in front of me. He said, well, what's this all about here? I thought this was a done deal. And I realized that this guy had been paid a huge sum of money to tell these guys that don't worry about it, this deal is going to get done. So those were the early signs. None of them very encouraging.
Question here is, I need some clarification.
Sure.
We came from Illinois with a similar discussion. We could call it vouchers. I don't know what you're saying. But the argument I've always heard is, if you put money into goes, you're taking away from public schools. So how do you balance that funding so you're not hurting public schools while you're sending more people to private schools?
Right. Let me answer that, and what you've asked me to do is, in spite of the $2 billion a year that Nevada spends on public schools, which is mandated by law, we are, in the last 3 polls, 51 out of 50, 49 out of 50, 47 out of 50 in our K-12 education system. And regardless of what the teachers say, there are some very fine teachers here, and I don't mean to impugn them or to say that they're anything less than what they are. We have a problem. And to me, I want to start out on a new direction. I want to say, let the parents choose their kids' education. And that's, if it takes away, and just so you know, in a technical sense, it really doesn't, because Nevada has what's known as per pupil funding. So if someone leaves a school, the funding may leave with them, but presumably you have less costs. But I'll say, okay, you know what? And we also have what's known as a hold harmless clause. In other words, that if you have more than a certain number of students who leave, you still get the original money. And you still also, by the way, you get federal funds. So it sounds like this terrible calamity, which it's not. But I'll even concede that, yes, maybe there'll be a little less money for the schools, But wait a minute, we've been funding schools with billions and billions of dollars since time immemorial, and our schools are the worst in the country. So to me, that justifies trying to take a new path.
Continuing on ESAs, has the funding question been resolved?
It is not. And again, I was critical of Governor Sandoval, and I remain critical of him. The 2015 legislature passed SB 302, which created parental choice. We wrote the regs. We were sued a couple of times in the lower courts. We cleared one. The other one, which the judge never disclosed, his wife was a teacher. Nothing wrong with it, but the teachers union opposed this. He put an injunction on it, so it went to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court found that this was not, one of the big arguments is that it violated what was known as the Blaine Amendment. The Blaine Amendment is part of our Constitution, and what it does, it prohibits the use of public funds for sectarian purposes. It's against the law. The Supreme Court in Nevada said that this doesn't do that. This is the use of public funds for an educational purpose, not for a sectarian purpose. And the court agreed with that. The Nevada Supreme Court agreed with that. But what they didn't like was, I call it a word problem, was that the Constitution mandates that the legislature must first allocate money for schools, and then it can do everything else. And they found that the legislature had done that, but then they had passed the ESAs, which meant that they were taking money out of money they'd already allocated, so therefore this must not be permissible. Governor Sandoval promised that he was behind this. I had a conversation with him in which he agreed to that, and then when push came to shove, he backed away. I personally, as I said, I would say that I said it to his face, and his response to me is, "We've been through that before." I don't know what that was, but I've said, and as I said, my friend Vito and I will assure you that if elected, I will sign no bill until I've passed an ESA. And if I don't get elected, don't have to worry about it. But if I do, count on it. But that's where the funding's at. Yeah. He'll get you, Mike.
I have a question. Is there a reason that Nevada doesn't issue out municipal bonds as much as they did in Mexico?
Well, Nevada, municipal bonds are actually issued by the counties. So that wouldn't be something. We have what's known as the bond fund, where we issue bonds. We effectively, let's assume Lyon County wants to issue $1.5 million in water bonds. There's issuing costs to that. We, the state, will say, "Go ahead, you sell us the bonds, and we will issue a much larger bond of 3 or 4 counties to pay for that." But to me, it hasn't been a lot. I don't know what we did before, but there's a steady stream, but it's not large. Most of the bonds that get issued here are revenue bonds, and this is, I'm opposing this. If you get your card up, this $2 billion stadium, and the reason we're going to do an ad, I think I haven't really decided to do it, which questions why we're spending $750 million in taxpayer funds to pay for millionaire athletes who can't stand for the flag. I have a problem with that. Stay tuned. I've kind of held on to it just because obviously the liberal media will not approve, but I feel very strongly about that. But the financial part of that is we don't need a $2 billion stadium, and probably we don't need a stadium at all, but okay, this is America, we compromise. I'll do $1 billion for the stadium, which you can build a pretty fabulous football stadium for. They've never worked out, but okay. But that gives me the $750 million that's your money, it's hotel revenue tax that I can use for education. I can use it to repeal the commerce tax. I can use it to fund ESAs. I can even give the teachers a raise. So there's a lot of things I can do with it. But if it's going to build a football stadium for the somewhat undistinguished, I don't know if we have any Raider fans here, but you know, if it was the Patriots or the Colts, the Bears, I don't know. But I'd probably take a different look. Only kidding. But yeah. So there is that. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot. This state, in my opinion, is just financially mismanaged. You know, whether it's giving tax breaks to people who don't need them, whether it's building football stadiums for teams that shouldn't get the money, whether it's not paying for education when we really need it. There's just issues, and if you want to know why I'm running, I would have to say that's pretty much close to the mark.
You know, as a former employee of the state education department in New York State, I find that many of our issues as far as children in our public schools, whether it be New York City, New York State, that the language problems that we have when we have so many children who can't speak our language taking proficiency exams in English, they can't pass it because they don't understand the language. I'm not suggesting that we write our tests in anything other than English. I am suggesting that something needs to be done with the children who cannot and do not speak our language.
Yeah, and I want to keep this more in the financial area, but I would agree with you. And I think Governor Sandoval tried to address it, but he didn't. And I think it's time that we got our constitutional officers and our legislators to focus on these issues instead of, there was something like 1,000 bills that were introduced in the last legislative session. Most of this stuff is nonsense. And it's time for a change. And, you know, I personally will do that, given the chance. Yes, sir. Over there, yeah.
Oh, I had a question. I was in an elementary school campus 2 weeks ago, and the emotionally disturbed children are passed around literally every 3 years to a different elementary school campus. And I was on the campus for about 2 hours. Those children were attacking janitors, physically attacking, and they were just climbing fences, running down the road.
Yeah, no, I think these are real problems. And
I was wondering how you work with that.
well, I think I work with it first by addressing it, and to first of all say, I think if you suggested kids who can't, the Hispanic Latino population of Nevada is about 30%. You know, some speak English flawlessly, but all too many just don't speak it. That is not being addressed. And what you're suggesting is it's not only a problem within the schools, which, you know, the public education system should address, but it's also a reason why parents are concerned about the education their kids are getting. In other words, this is why parental choice comes in. I mean, I'm not saying, you know, should the state run away from these problems? No, we should not. But I think we need to put our arms around it and come up with some sort of solution that will resolve it. And to date, we haven't done that.
You have a last question here?
Yeah.
You mentioned that a low tax climate in the state of Nevada might be an attractive incentive for companies to relocate here. It seems to me one of the offsets to that would be the water availability situation here. Every time I look at Lake Mead, it's kind of going down another foot or so. Are you aware, or are you backing any programs to try and reallocate water out of the Colorado River, or other programs to try and help Nevada from a water standpoint?
Well, in fact, your question is very kind. It's the last one. Pat, she is the water queen of probably southern Nevada, and I had lunch last week, and you know, I asked her. I said, what are some of the, you know, how can we solve the water issues here? And you know, I'd suggested the desalinization. She didn't think that was a good solution. There was the program where we were going to take water from Lincoln County, and that was great for us, but it caused a furor up north. We return something like 30 to 40%. I mean, this is why my wife buys bottled water, but the water we send back a lot of our, I just call it used water to Lake Mead. But yeah, it's a real problem. I don't know. It's as I said. One of the things I want to do, if elected, I say there are three areas that I want to focus on. One is so-called water tech, and I think the state is coming to grips with it. There's a group called Water Safe, I think it is, which is part of GOED, but they don't have the funding, they don't have the focus to really begin to make a difference. Again, to me, what is leadership about? Okay, it's about a lot of things, but one of them is setting priorities and making decisions, and we just haven't done that. As I said, to me, it's whether it's in education, whether it's in the economy, whether it's in health insurance. You know, and again, give me the time sign here. We need to restructure our health care insurance. How are we going to do that? Well, we're not going to do it the way they did in Washington. I mean, there's cuts and scrapes insurance, and there's catastrophic insurance. Well, you could get cuts and scrapes insurance, which is why most of 75 to 90% of us go to the doctor because we have a head cold, or we have an earache, or we cut ourselves. And you can do that very inexpensively. In fact, you can probably do it through telemedicine, $10, $20 a month. But that's not what we're doing. And again, this goes back to what I said earlier, having been in Carson City and just seeing this pay-to-play mentality there. It will never happen unless we change. But it impacts everything.
So, okay, we have the real final last question over there.
I noticed that you were focusing on diversifying the economy and the economy.
Right.
The education system here, though, is kind of tied into that because to get good companies out here, they're looking at what kind of education is available for their children as they relocate out here. In my concern, I've worked with the school district in the ESL situation.
ESL, right?
Trying to help the children learn English because the children are the promise of our future, I hope. But we're also constrained so much by the federal guidelines, and I know education is a state control, could be a state controlled thing. Well, but the money issue comes in. People want more money from the federal government. Along with that, though, you have some restraints attached to those funds, and it just seems like a mangled mess.
Yeah, I mean, I will answer the last question here. You're right, it is. I mean, it's the same thing like healthcare. Healthcare is a complicated situation. There's multiple stakeholders. And it's the same thing in education. And what I can say is that I just think it's one thing to have $2 billion set aside for education, but it's another thing to spend it wisely. And I think that for whatever reason, we're not spending it wisely. And what does that mean? I've been told, and I haven't looked at it, that our school administration is very top-heavy. We've got a lot of superintendents, assistant superintendents, assistant to the assistant superintendents. That's a problem. There's a problem with licensing. Okay, I was at a dinner table about a month ago, and there was a wonderful lady there who was, I think, had said 30 years of experience as a special ed teacher. and she'd been in California. She couldn't get a license here because of the restrictions that were put on her. And so, and what causes those restrictions? Pay to play. Okay? I mean, this is where corruption has a real impact on our lives. Is that whoever it is, and I love teachers and I don't mind their union, but whoever it is trying to protect jobs, so they put all sorts of restrictions on there. They pay off the legislators, and meanwhile this lady cannot get her license. So the answer is yeah. If we begin to create a government that has some integrity and is somewhat responsive to what the people of the state wants, I think we can solve these problems. But that will not happen until we begin to elect leaders who at least have some sense of responsibility to the people of the state and to what I would call principled decision making.
Okay.
There. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Well, wait a minute, you can't go there. We have a little job for you to do, Dan. Okay, we have 2 drawings. One is for door prize, and the door prize today is a $25 gift certificate to PT's Pub.
No, Village Pub.
Oh, Village Pub. I'm sorry. Where is it? Right there. Okay. What number is it? All right. It's 701-8664.
Another book.
Oh, right there. Woohoo! All right. Okay.
Come see me in bed.
Okay. Check with Bill. He's got it. I thought he had it in his pocket.
No, I don't want you to dig it.
And, well, it was fun.
Okay.
Okay, now, this is a 50-50, and the winner for this gets $29. And the number is, you read it?
Yeah. The last 3 numbers, 699.
699. Oh, way over there. All right, see.
Hey,
see
Phil,
Bill?
you don't need the money. Come
See,
and swing by.
come and see Bill. Well, once again, Dan, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you.